Why you'd regret being a pirate during the Golden Age. Before we begin, what hour is it for you? Midnight? 3 a.m.? Let me know in the comments, because I promise you're not alone. Welcome to the Ship of Fools. South. You've done it. You've thrown away your boring land life. Goodbye baker's apprentice, farewell shoe-mending drudgery, adieu to all those taxes, and you've run off to join a pirate crew. Because you, brave soul, wanted freedom, adventure, maybe a little rum. You had dreams of gold doubloons, tropical beaches, and swinging from ropes while shouting clever one-liners. Instead, you're standing on the deck of a ship that smells like a damp sock left to ferment in a public latrine. The sails creak ominously, the ropes squeal like haunted pigs, and there's a man nearby with no nose and a tattoo of a chicken on his forehead who keeps calling you breakfast. Welcome aboard. Your first mistake was believing pirates recruit like noble outlaws. In reality, they recruit like drunken kidnappers. You were invited on board with a friendly jab from a musket and a helpful push into the cargo hold. No one asked your name. No one asked if you knew how to swim. You were handed a bucket and told to earn your keep or feed the sharks. Your bucket, it leaks. The crew, all 43 of them, you counted twice while hiding in a barrel, are a mosaic of bad hygiene and bad decisions. There's one-eyed Jeb, who actually has both eyes but insists on wearing a patch over the wrong one. He says it gives him character. There's a man called Rat who talks to actual rats and eats things you're pretty sure are not food. And then there's the captain, Captain Elmer Two Guts Black Hook, a man so terrifying he once allegedly bit a cannonball in half. He has 2 visible weapons at all times, a hook that squeaks when he gestures, and a strange habit of singing lullabies in Swedish. No one asks why. You made the mistake of laughing once, and you're still recovering from the mop handle he introduced to your ribcage. Your second mistake, expecting organisation. You thought pirates had structure, a captain, a first mate, maybe a cook who knows which end of the fish to fry. What you get is chaos with occasional shouting. The chain of command here is basically the loudest guy wins. Except when the cook gets mad, in which case everyone hides and eats dried sea biscuits in the crow's nest. Speaking of food, brace yourself. The first meal they offer you is something they call fish stew. It smells like regret and looks like something that lost a fight with a cannon. You try to eat around the bones, but then you realise those aren't fish bones. You don't ask. You just keep chewing. It's either this or licking the deck for stray crumbs. Now, hygiene. You thought maybe, just maybe, there'd be some kind of bathing system, a bucket of fresh water, a soap sliver passed down from generation to generation. Number hygiene here means not actively leaking. You haven't changed clothes since boarding, and neither has anyone else. Your shirt now qualifies as a separate ecosystem. You've named the flea that lives under your collar. His name is Pierre. Your bedding is a hammock, technically. It's a tattered net suspended above a barrel of spoiled lemons. You sleep like a folded piece of laundry while trying not to inhale too deeply, because the man snoring next to you is definitely not dead, but also not far off. Training. Your training was a single sentence. Don't die. You were handed a sword with a bend in the middle and told, if you lose this, use your teeth. So you swing it around, trying to look fierce, until someone points out you're holding it backward. You nod solemnly, flip it around, and hope no one saw the tear forming in your left eye. But the worst part, the absolute lowest, most humiliating aspect, is your job title, swabber. Your task, cleaning the deck, which sounds fine until you realise what deck means on this ship. It's the communal spill zone for blood, fish guts, vomit, rum, and whatever that is in the corner. No one knows, no one wants to know. You scrub until your arms ache, only to be told you missed a spot. You didn't. That stain is older than democracy. Oh, and then there's the rats. Not just regular rats, pirate rats. Bold, aggressive, possibly unionised. They steal your food, chew your boots, and one of them winked at you yesterday. You're fairly certain you'll owe it rent soon. Still, you hold on to hope. Somewhere deep inside you, a tiny spark still believes you'll rise through the ranks, that you'll become first mate, maybe even captain. But then you hear someone mutter, "The last first mate exploded." You don't ask for details. You just keep swabbing. By sunset, your back aches, your hands blister, and your soul is slightly detached from your body. The captain shouts something about setting course for loot and plunder, and the crew cheers like lunatics. You try to cheer too, but your voice cracks and someone throws a spoon at your head. You look out over the endless ocean, clutching your bucket and think, this is fine. This is what I wanted. And then the ship lurches, you fall on your face, and someone laughs so hard they fall overboard. Welcome to piracy. You wake up to a boot nudging your ribs. Not gently. There's no gentle on this ship. It's more of a good morning now suffer kind of vibe. The sun hasn't risen yet, but the ship is already groaning with motion and noise, wood creaking, men coughing, something clattering ominously in the galley. You sit up in your hammock and realise two things instantly. One, your spine has folded into a new shape, and two, someone has stolen your boots. Not that your boots were great to begin with. They were basically stitched together sadness, but they were yours. You stumble barefoot across the damp deck, dodging splinters, rat droppings, and an unidentified slime trail that stretches from the powder magazine to the galley. You don't ask questions. The answers would only hurt you. Breakfast is being handed out by Cookie, real name unknown, culinary credentials non-existent. He's missing 3 fingers, 2 teeth, and all sense of proportion. Today's breakfast is a greyish lump of salted pork, possibly pork adjacent, and a stale ship's biscuit that could double as a weapon. You try to eat quickly before the weevils wake up and start protesting your intrusion. As you gnaw your way through the concrete biscuit, you overhear a conversation between 2 grizzled veterans about the last guy who fell asleep on watch. You don't catch the whole story, but the phrase shark bait with extra seasoning gives you enough context to never blink again. And then comes your favourite part of the day, chores. Because apparently, being a pirate isn't all plundering and shouting "ah". It's mostly bucket work. You haul water, you mop up vomit, you climb the rigging to untangle sails while the wind tries to murder you. Once you were told to scrape barnacles off the hull, from the outside, while dangling over the ocean, tied only by a rope that was visibly fraying. They called it a trust-building exercise. You called it a legally actionable situation. At some point during the day there's sword practice again. But it's not really practice. It's watching 2 half-mad pirates swing at each other with rusted cutlasses, while everyone else bets rum on who loses a finger first. You hold your own weapon, still bent, still depressing, and pretend you're really into knots instead. No one respects a knifeless knot guy, but at least you don't bleed. You try to make friends. You really do. You strike up a conversation with a guy named Toby, who seems reasonably sane until he tells you his parrot is his dead grandmother reincarnated. The parrot then bites your ear. You learn to be alone. Eventually, the captain decides to give a rousing speech. He stomps onto the deck with 1 foot. His other leg is a barrel somehow, raises his voice to the heavens and declares that glory is on the horizon. No one asks where. No one asks how. They just cheer. You cheer too, mostly out of fear. The man once disciplined someone for blinking disrespectfully. Later, you're assigned lookout duty in the crow's nest, a wooden bucket on top of a 20-foot mast that sways like a drunk eel. Up you go, clutching a splintery ladder and trying not to vomit. Once you reach the top, you're treated to the most beautiful view you've ever seen. Endless ocean, sun sparkling off the waves, and an aggressive gull trying to nest in your hair. You last about an hour before your vision blurs, and you begin negotiating with various deities you don't believe in. Eventually, someone yells at you to come down because they need help hoisting the mainsail. You don't know what that means. You nod anyway. By nightfall, you've developed 7 new bruises, 3 cuts, and an existential crisis. You smell like fish, failure, and a hint of candle wax. Don't ask. Your hammock still smells like lemon rot, and your shirt now has a permanent salt crust. You lie there in the darkness, surrounded by snoring, wheezing, and the occasional muttered curse, and you wonder, is this what freedom tastes like? And then you remember you're being paid in shares. Not salary, shares. Which means you only get paid if you survive until the next haul, and only if the captain doesn't reallocate your share to ship maintenance. Spoiler. Ship maintenance mostly means buying more rum and patching the sails with old shirts. You drift off to sleep with 1 arm wrapped around your bucket, your dreams filled with angry gulls, stabbing biscuits, and a parrot whispering tax advice. You are no longer a landlubber. You're a pirate now, and you already regret it. The first time nature calls aboard a pirate ship, you think, surely there's a bucket, a corner, a curtain, some basic human system. And then you see it. The railing. That's it. That's the toilet. A stretch of weather-beaten wood, suspended above churning waves, frequently slick with seawater and disappointment. You're told it's called the head. You assume that's because you risk smashing yours every time you try to use it. A crusty pirate named Knuckles, no one knows why he's called that and no one dares ask, offers you a tip. Lean forward, never backward. Forward is embarrassment, backward is obituary. He grins, revealing 3 gold teeth and an entire anchovy stuck in his molars. You try it. Not the anchovy, the other thing. Clutching a rope for balance, you drop your breeches with one hand while the ship bucks under you like an offended horse. The wind howls, a wave crashes, a seagull shrieks overhead, possibly mocking you. You've never known such vulnerability. It's like skydiving naked, except wetter and more personally revealing. And God help you if there's a storm. Storms transform every bodily function into an Olympic sport. You're gripping the railing with both hands, feet slipping on sea-slick planks, praying your intestines cooperate while lightning flashes like some divine spotlight on your shame. Meanwhile, sharks circle below like they've read the menu and know what's coming. Privacy? Non-existent. If you're modest, forget it. You share this ship with 40 other men who have all completely given up on the concept of shame. Conversations continue mid-defecation. One man even whistles. Another critiques your form. Bit wobbly on the lean, he says. Try planting your left foot like so. You hate him immediately and forever. Toileting etiquette varies wildly by region and accent. The Spaniards sing, the French talk about cheese, the Scots simply grunt. No one looks anyone in the eye. That would be too much. But everything else is fair game. Once, someone carved a little face into the railing and named it Sir Craps-a-lot. It's the only form of entertainment this side of dysentery. The worst is nighttime. Imagine climbing out of a hammock at 3 a.m, half asleep, barefoot, and shuffling through a maze of snoring limbs just to relieve yourself in a gale-force wind. You've never questioned your life choices more. One false move and you're fish food. Literally. Last week, old Georgie slipped midstream and was last seen waving with pants around his ankles. And that's when you learn about the backup system, the slop bucket, hidden under a loose plank near the galley. It's only used in emergencies or cowardice. But it's there, festering in the darkness like a cursed relic. Once full, someone's job is to dump it overboard, that someone is always the newest recruit, that someone is you. Of course, all of this assumes you're not blocked up, because the ship's menu, salt pork, hardtack, more salt pork, turns your intestines into a salt-crusted maze of regret. Some pirates go days without performing. When it finally happens, it's treated like a religious experience. There are stories, nicknames, celebrations. That's Big Barry, they whisper. He once held it for 6 days, sank a dinghy with the splash. Sanitation? Don't be cute. No one washes their hands. No one brushes their teeth. They wipe with whatever's handy. Rope ends, fraying shirts, the occasional unlucky barnacle. Disease spreads faster than rumours. You get used to the smell. You don't stop smelling it. You just stop noticing. It's like Stockholm Syndrome, but for your nose. Some of the crew claim they prefer it this way. Builds character, they say. Keeps you sharp. You quietly disagree while pouring seawater on your shoes to scrub away whatever that was. You haven't looked at your reflection in days. You're not sure your reflection would even acknowledge you anymore. Eventually, you try to adapt. You time your movements with the calm of the tide. You brace like a pro. You find a sweet spot where the railing dips just enough and the wind doesn't slap your cheeks like a disapproving grandmother. It becomes ritual, a strange, smelly rite of passage. No one talks about it directly, but every pirate nods a little more respectfully once you've stared down the ocean with your pants down and lived to tell the tale. By now, you've memorized every crack in the rail, every barnacle underfoot. You've become intimate with the sea in a way no romantic poem ever described. You've left more than your mark on this voyage. You've left yourself, one agonizing wind-battered session at a time. And just when you think you've got it down, The captain declares, "Next port's a week out. Hold fast, boys." Hold fast indeed. You didn't think it could get worse, but then the bucket goes missing. You ask around. Blank stares. A shrug. A burp. It has vanished, likely kicked overboard during a drunken brawl, or perhaps it simply gave up on existence. Either way, the emergency comfort system is gone, and with it, your last illusion of modern dignity. Your bowels, naturally, pick this moment to regain full operational capacity. You dash to the railing. It's nighttime. The sea is pitching harder than the ship's cook trying to pass boiled rat as sea pheasant. The stars blur. A cold gust cuts through your breeches as you squat, balancing on trembling thighs, clutching a rope that smells of despair. The ship lurches. Your life flashes before your eyes, mostly the recent bits involving salted meat and poor decisions. You survive. Barely. Congratulations. You're a real pirate now. The next morning, the cook, One-Eyed Ben, serves something he calls gut glue. It's a stew made from beans, hardtack crumbs, and the ship's last onion, technically classified as a weapon by now. "Stops you up proper," he says, grinning through a beard of crumbs and menace. You eat it out of fear, and it works. For 3 solid days, you experience the joy of not needing the railing. Spirits lift. A man recites poetry. Someone sings a sea shanty about constipation. Then it all hits at once, in the middle of cannon practice. You run, not walk, across the deck, dodging ropes, barrels, a man juggling knives, and 2 swabbing the deck with 1 bucket between them. You reach the stern, prepare yourself, and realize you're not alone. Half the crew has had the same idea. You form an informal queue, standing politely, while everyone pretends not to hear the grunting and splashing. The line moves with the speed of tectonic plates. You consider going over the side mid-queue. You consider death. Knuckles gives you a sympathetic nod. "First real test of the sea," he mutters. "Some men fail it. You don't." But you do emerge 30 minutes later a changed person, spiritually, emotionally, gastrointestinally. From then on, you develop a routine. Wake up, drink the morning swill, make the walk to the stern, check for queue length, and time your moment. You plan like a general preparing for siege. You learn to detect patterns, who eats what and when, and how long it takes to hit them. You trade watch shifts to avoid peak times. You befriend the cabin boy just so he'll warn you if someone's heading toward your preferred railing zone. You even pick a favourite plank. It's slightly smoother, less warped by the salt. You name it Margaret. You whisper to it when the sea gets rough. Then come the accidents. First is Jolly Pete, who, despite the name, is not known for smiling, loses his footing during a squall and nearly introduces himself to a shark named Kevin, so dubbed by the crew after several unfortunate encounters. Pete survives, but Kevin gets his breeches. They are not replaced. Pete now goes commando, a fact he shares frequently and without prompting. Then there's Leaky Jim, not a nickname he chose. One unfortunate moment, one ill-timed sneeze, and he's legend. The crew starts keeping a chalk tally near the mast. Overboard pants, 7. You check it every morning. You also start tying your breeches tighter. You realise hygiene is not a luxury here. It's a whispered prayer. You begin rinsing your hands with salt water. Not because anyone told you to, but because your left pinky started growing something that looked like a small mushroom colony. You fashion a makeshift scrubber from fish bones and despair. You consider charging the others for use. You are promptly told to shut up and swab the deck. One night, after a long shift manning the bilge pump, you dream of a toilet, a porcelain throne, cool and smooth, with a handle that makes the waste vanish like magic. You wake weeping. The truth is this: no one tells you about the real horrors of pirate life. The combat, the plunder, the mutinies. Sure, those are flashy. But it's the toilet situation that truly breaks men. The constant awareness of your own biology. The logistical ballet of balance, privacy, and sanitation. The creeping realization that you will never feel truly clean again. And yet, something changes. Somewhere between your 7th near-death poop and your 4th intestinal crisis, you begin to laugh. A deep, raw, exhausted laugh. The kind only someone who has stared into the abyss of the sea while evacuating their bowels can understand. You're bonded now, not just to the crew, but to the very absurdity of life itself. Because in the end, that's pirate life, a glorious, foul-smelling, dignity-stripping voyage into madness. And you're already waist-deep in it. There's a distinct sound that comes from biting into hardtack, a dry, lifeless crack, followed by the crunch of regret and enamel trauma. It's the first thing you hear each morning after being jolted awake by some combination of snoring rats or the cook throwing a ladle at someone. You clutch your tin bowl like it holds salvation. It holds betrayal. Again, hardtack. The bread that refuses to die. It's not really food, more of a building material that's been demoted. A beige brick with an attitude. If you lick it for long enough, it softens slightly. If you bite it too fast, it fights back. A man named Toothless Tom found this out the hard way. His name was just Tom before breakfast. The weevils come free of charge, little protein bonuses, the cook says. At first you pick them out. By day 5 you start naming them. By week 2 you just eat them. Crunchy. Nutty. Better than the biscuit if we're being honest. You try not to think too hard about that. The meat is no better. It's salted so aggressively it could file a workplace harassment complaint. What kind of meat is it? That's an ongoing investigation. Could be pork, could be rat, could be whatever was still twitching last night. The cook, who everyone just calls Guts, refuses to elaborate. He just laughs and stirs his cauldron of doom with a bone. Not a spoon, a bone. Adds flavour, he winks. You think he's joking. You hope he's joking. You no longer know what jokes are. For vegetables, there's a barrel of something green and suspiciously fuzzy. Technically, it was once cabbage. Now, it's a science experiment. Guts scoops out a blob with his hands, bare of course, and slaps it onto your biscuit like a challenge. Sailor's relish, he says. You pretend to smile. Your stomach makes a noise that sounds like a dying seagull. Every now and then, a barrel of apples appears. Fresh, glistening, glorious apples. Hope returns. Spirits lift. A man recites Shakespeare. Someone carves a flute from driftwood. It's all beautiful until you notice the apples have a half-life of about 4 minutes. They rot faster than your optimism. You bite into one, and it implodes into fermented goo. Still better than the meat. The real horror, though, is the monotony. Day after day, it's the same menu. Hardtack, mystery meat, and despair stew. Your body craves anything with actual nutrients. Your dreams become fevered hallucinations of oranges. Oranges become gods. You see their glowing, citrusy forms in the clouds, hear whispers of vitamin C in the creaking of the ship. You cry a little, quietly. Then comes scurvy. It starts with bleeding gums, a casual tooth drop here and there. You wake one morning with a mouth that feels like it's been through a bar fight. Your gums are swollen, your breath smells like a dead jellyfish, and your tongue has developed a texture best described as wet rope. Guts shrugs. Classic signs, means you're properly initiated. He offers you a remedy. It's a tea made of boiled pine needles, mixed with whatever he found growing on the underside of the barrel. You drink it. It burns. Your vision goes temporarily blurry. You wake up 2 hours later, hugging the ship's anchor and whispering apologies to a seagull. No one helps you. They say the cure has to run its course. Meanwhile, the older sailors seem unfazed. They eat their rock biscuits and salted meat like it's fine dining. They've lost the ability to taste or feel hope. You envy their numbness. You aspire to it. One man, Grog-Face Bill, claims he once ate nothing but salted horse for 3 months and lived to tell the tale. He has no teeth, one ear, and an eye that twitches every time someone says soup. He's the happiest man on board. Mealtimes become less about nutrition and more about endurance. Can you choke down the sludge without gagging? Can you pretend that the biscuit isn't growing mould in the shape of a skull? Can you look Guts in the eye and thank him for his culinary craft? You learn tricks. Dousing everything in rum helps, if you can spare it. You hide your biscuit under your hat for an hour so it softens with sweat. You make tiny food sculptures just to laugh before eating them. You tell yourself it's an adventure, a grand, thrilling life. And if you repeat that enough times, you might even believe it. Eventually, your stomach adapts. It stops protesting. It simply accepts its fate. You grow lean. You grow hard. You grow strangely proud of your ability to digest rocks and lies. And one day, as you gnaw a corner of hardtack and watch the horizon tilt gently in the breeze, you realize this is your life now. A slow, crunchy descent into madness, guided by a man with one eye and no gloves. It's mid-afternoon and you're still chewing breakfast. That's not an exaggeration. The biscuit you started before the sun rose is fighting back with the stamina of a barnacle. You've tried soaking it in rum. You've tried dipping it in the grey water that passes for tea. You even tried hitting it with your dagger to break it in half, but the dagger bent. The biscuit didn't. This is not food. It's a test of character. Nearby, a fellow crewmate named Lumpy drops his spoon and curses in 4 languages. His stew moved. Not like shimmered or bubbled. It moved. Swam, actually. You look down at your own bowl and realize it's suspiciously still, which on this ship might be even worse. Guts yells from the galley, if it twitches, it's fresh. And that's apparently the highest culinary praise you're going to get. Someone finds a beetle in their porridge. They name it Clarence. Clarence is voted crew mascot by popular acclaim and placed gently on a coil of rope. He lasts 20 minutes before the ship's cat eats him. Half the crew mourns. The other half debates whether the cat is edible. As for drinking water, well, that's complicated. There was a rain barrel once, a clean one, but then Jenkins tried to bathe in it, and now it smells like foot soup. So now it's watered-down beer or brackish bilge for everyone. Rum is sacred, water is optional. Your kidneys weep. Occasionally the cook stumbles upon a surprise. A barrel of onions lost beneath sacks of rope. A pouch of dried figs discovered in a rat's former nest. Once, you struck gold. A single lemon. It was like a miracle. The crew gathered around it as if it were the Ark of the Covenant. No one dared bite it. It was too holy. Eventually, it shriveled into a pebble of wasted dreams. Rations are rationed harder when there's no loot, and there's no loot. Not unless you count the last captain's old boots which someone tried to cook. They tasted, according to witnesses, like betrayal. You weren't hungry enough to try them. Yet, hunger becomes a background noise, like creaking timbers or the groaning of your soul. It's just there, constant, gnawing, personal. It sharpens your senses and dulls your mood. You once fought a man over a stale crust. You've stared lovingly at a potato. You've looked at the parrot a little too long. Desperation breeds creativity. One sailor whittles hardtack into dice and organizes gambling tournaments. Another starts painting faces on biscuits and staging tragic puppet shows. Guts writes haikus about boiled rope. They're actually pretty good. Still, nothing prepares you for Weevil soup night. There's no warning. You're handed a bowl. The broth is brown. The protein is crawling. Extra crunchy, says Guts, ladling another squirming scoop into someone's mug. A few men vomit immediately. Others stare dead-eyed into the distance. You drink. Not because you're brave, because you're tired. And that's when the hallucinations begin. You see your childhood dog, long since dead, offering you a sandwich. Your ex-girlfriend appears on a cloud, holding a slice of peach pie. You sob, she floats away. You try to bite the air, you pass out. When you wake, the crew is singing. Badly. And Grogface Bill is dancing with a mop that he's named Clementine. Someone has stolen the figurehead and is wearing it like a helmet. You're too hungry to care. Occasionally there's fishing. It's the only time food feels real. You dangle a line over the edge and pray. Sometimes a fish bites, sometimes it's just an old boot. Once you caught a jellyfish. You ate it. You've never been the same since. Meal etiquette is non-existent. There's no waiting your turn. There's no second servings. You eat with your hands, your knife, or someone else's spoon, if you can pry it from their unconscious fingers. No one judges. Everyone steals. You guard your food like it's gold. Because it is. And then one day, land. You see the outline of an island. Lush, verdant, covered in possibilities. You dream of coconuts, bananas, actual meat. The captain announces a stop for resupply. The crew cheers. You cry tears of pure sodium. But the island is barren, stripped by the last ship to pass through. Nothing but sand, spiders, and more disappointment. You return to sea with a single captured goat, 3 coconuts, and a slightly angrier crew. You all stare at the goat for hours. You're not sure who will crack first, the goat or Jenkins. By now, you've learned to accept it. The food isn't food. The drink isn't drink. The hope isn't hope. But somehow, you survive. You chew. You swallow. You gag. You belch. You move on. And in the darkest hours of night, when your belly growls like a storm and your teeth ache from clenching, you whisper to yourself, "This is the price of freedom." You thought pirates were a team, a rowdy band of cutthroats with a shared dream of freedom and treasure, right? Wrong. You're not on a team. You're in a room full of overcooked nerves, undercooked egos, and unresolved childhood trauma, and they all have sharp objects. The first lesson in pirate sociology is this: nobody likes anyone, and trust is a fairy tale you tell cabin boys so they stop crying. Every man on this ship is a potential ally, enemy, or both, depending on how the dice land and whether someone stole his spoon. Again, you wake up to the sound of yelling, not unusual. What's new is the clanging. That's two men fighting over a belt, not because belts are rare, but because one of them claimed it was luckier. The loser now has a black eye and the winner has a belt with blood on it. He's thrilled. The captain walks by, doesn't even blink. "Sort it out," he mutters. That's pirate conflict resolution, violence, followed by apathy. There are no therapy sessions on a pirate ship, no HR. Your grievances go unresolved unless you settle them yourself, often with fists, knives, or creative swearing contests. Jenkins once challenged a man to an insult duel. He lost because his opponent rhymed sea slug with dung mug. Poetry is dangerous. Tension simmers constantly. The sea is boring. The food is terrible. And the air reeks of sweat, fish guts, and personal failure. That's a volatile cocktail. One wrong joke, one spilled mug of grog, and boom, mutiny. And mutiny isn't some dramatic all-hands rebellion with torches and banners. Sometimes it's just quiet Larry slipping poison into the rum, or Snaggletooth Steve suggesting the captain take a short swim. With chains. Mutiny is a whisper, a nudge, a missing nail in the ladder. It's Tuesday. You learn fast to watch people's hands. Smiles lie. Knuckles don't. If someone sharpens a knife too long, ask why. If someone offers you extra stew, check for a weird smell. If someone compliments your boots, sleep in them, with a weapon, preferably two. One day, you find a note carved into the hull, just below the sleeping deck. It reads, "He snores, he dies." No signature. You immediately learn to fake snore softly, rhythmically, and apologetically. There's also politics. Pirate democracy is a myth. Sure, there's voting, sometimes, but more often there's grumbling, followed by threats, followed by someone waking up tied to a barrel. Votes can be bought with rum, favours, or the promise of fewer beatings. That's campaign strategy. The captain, of course, knows all this. He's no fool. That eye patch? Decorative. The parrot? Stolen. The pistol? Loaded at all times and pointed slightly at everyone. He doesn't sleep without two guards and a knife taped to his thigh. Not because he's paranoid, because he's seen what happens when a crew gets hungry, desperate, or bored. So he keeps them busy. Chores, drills, made-up treasure hunts. You once spent 6 hours digging on a beach because the captain had a feeling. All you found was sand, sunburn, and Jenkins's buried shame, a love letter to a goat named Clara. Still, you stayed busy, that's the point. Sometimes there's an actual vote, like when the crew decides where to sail next or who gets whipped for stealing the last lime. Everyone has a say, which sounds great until you realise the loudest voices win, and the loudest are also the stabbiest. Paranoia becomes your closest friend. You learn to laugh at jokes you don't understand, nod when someone says "I," and never, ever correct another pirate's story, no matter how historically inaccurate it is. If Long John claims he fought a kraken with nothing but a spoon, you nod and say, "Aye, brave thing, that spoon." Your bunkmate, Rotten Mick, talks in his sleep, mostly threats. You move your hammock 6 inches every night just to confuse him. You also switch hats with Jenkins occasionally, as a decoy. Jenkins hasn't noticed yet. Jenkins isn't very bright. Still, despite the chaos, mutiny rarely finishes the job. Why? Because no one really wants to lead. They just want to complain. Leadership means responsibility, and pirates hate that more than bad stew. The few times someone does try to overthrow the captain, they usually discover leadership comes with paperwork and angry mobs. So it balances, a low, constant simmer of tension and mutual loathing, just enough to keep people sharp, not enough to explode. Usually, you go to sleep one night with your dagger in your boot, your spoon under your pillow, and your name muttered softly like a prayer. You don't dream of treasure, you dream of surviving until breakfast. And maybe, just maybe, keeping your hat. You start your morning with salt in your beard and a knife missing from your belt. No one admits to anything, of course. You suspect Jenkins, mostly because he won't make eye contact and is sweating more than usual. He says it's the heat. It's not. Breakfast is burnt fish and hardtack. Rotten Mick finds a nail in his biscuit. He keeps it. Might be useful, he says, like a man who's planning something. He probably is. You resolve to never turn your back on anyone, including the parrot who has learned to mimic the word traitor and cackles every time someone sneezes. Later that day, the first mate gathers everyone on deck to announce that someone has been hoarding citrus rinds. This is a crime worthy of collective outrage. Scurvy is creeping into the crew like mould into a damp sock, and those rinds were hope wrapped in bitterness. The captain demands confessions. No one speaks. Jenkins farts audibly. This is considered suspicious. He's flogged just to be safe. Discipline on a pirate ship isn't about fairness, it's about example. Every punishment is a theatrical warning, a reminder that today might be the day your friends throw you overboard for bad timing, or bad breath. You've also discovered the currency of the ship isn't gold, it's secrets. Who snores? Who talks in their sleep? Who's hiding rum under the floorboards? Who cried during a thunderstorm and blamed it on sea spray? You hoard this knowledge like treasure, because sometimes the difference between being tossed in a barrel and getting the good hammock is simply knowing who kissed whose sister back in Barbados. One night, you're woken by whispering near the cannon stack. You hold your breath, ears straining. It's Grog-Eye Pete and Three-Tooth Thomas. They're arguing over whether the captain should be replaced. He's got soft hands, Pete hisses. Never trust a man whose nails are cleaner than his conscience. Thomas disagrees. He once bit a rat in half. That's captain energy. You pretend to snore and hope they forget you're nearby. You've never felt more alive, or more like a liability. Mutiny etiquette is tricky. Too early and you're dead. Too late and you're still dead, but from starvation or friendly fire. The art is timing. Wait until morale dips just low enough, but before the captain notices and stages a fake treasure hunt to distract everyone. Again, the captain, for his part, has begun sharpening his cutlass more loudly than usual. It's a warning. He does it during dinner, staring at people in turns, especially Jenkins. Jenkins is now visibly losing weight from anxiety, which may be the healthiest thing that's happened to him in months. You begin keeping a personal list. People most likely to snap. Jenkins, obviously. Rotten Mick, always on edge. Grog-Eye Pete, who keeps drawing treasure maps that lead to the same suspiciously shallow grave. You rank yourself somewhere in the middle, slightly unstable, dangerously observant. Even humour is a weapon now. The crew's jokes turn darker. Someone draws a noose on a barrel and labels it Captain's Throne. Someone else replaces the captain's rum with seawater. He spits it across the deck and curses Poseidon. A seagull defecates on his hat moments later. Some call it a sign, others call it Tuesday. Then there's the insult economy. On this ship, a creative insult can earn you respect, or get you stabbed. Calling someone a bilge-drinking jellyfish lover is mildly offensive, but accuse them of having a mother so ugly even krakens avert their eyes, and suddenly you're in a duel with spoons at dawn. You once saw two men fight for 10 minutes using only limp mackerel. The crowd was electric. It ended when one man slipped on a fish scale and knocked himself out. He was named Boatswain the Brave afterward. Irony is a survival tactic. Of course, the actual mutiny, if it ever happens, won't be what you expect. It won't come with banners or speeches. It'll be a knife slipped between ribs while the rest of the crew pretends to look away. Then, awkward silence. Then, a new captain elected via shrug and peer pressure. For now, the balance holds. The crew is too tired to murder, too hungry to organise, too superstitious to make a real move. The captain has promised landfall soon, and the faint smell of coconuts is enough to keep everyone just distracted enough to not commit homicide. Yet, you fall asleep that night with one hand on your dagger and the other on your spoon. You dream of mutiny, not as a nightmare, but as administrative paperwork you'd really rather not deal with. Not tonight. Tomorrow maybe, after breakfast, if Jenkins hasn't snapped first. You wake up face down in a puddle. Not on land, not on a calm ocean. On a violently pitching deck that now tilts at an angle your bones don't appreciate. You roll over just in time to get slapped by a wave that has somehow found its way onto the ship despite all known laws of decency and physics. You sit up, coughing, shivering, and wondering how many internal organs you've just donated to Poseidon. The storm doesn't ease in like a polite guest. It erupts. One moment the sky is dull and grey, the next it's blackened with rage, and the sea responds like a jealous god denied tribute. Rain falls in sheets, not droplets, not sprinkles, sheets, full linen sets. Your shirt is soaked before you can even finish the thought, is that thunder? Yes, it is. It's thunder, and it brought its friend, lightning. Lightning doesn't strike near the ship. It strikes the ship, right near the mast. Sparks fly. Someone screams. You think it's Jenkins, but it could be you. There's no shame in screaming when nature's trying to erase you from the census. The ship groans like it has opinions. The timbers creak under your bare feet. You clutch a rope that's slick with rain and possibly despair. Your job in the storm is simple. Don't die. Also, keep the ship from capsizing, bail water from the lower deck, and prevent the sail from tearing in half. And while you're at it, try not to vomit directly on the bosun again. He still hasn't forgiven you from the last time. Your stomach is staging a revolution. You've vomited twice already, once overboard, once into a bucket that is now missing. There's nothing left inside you but dread and hardtack fumes, and yet your body continues to retch like it's trying to evict your soul. You look to the captain for guidance. He's laughing, cackling actually, standing near the helm like some demon philosopher in the middle of chaos, his hat blown off, his hair streaming like seaweed in a hurricane. "Good wind!" he shouts, as the mainmast lists 5 degrees to starboard and a barrel flies past your ear like a cannonball launched by Poseidon himself. The helmsman has lost control, not of the ship, of his bowels. The wheel spins uselessly, and now the ship is turning in a direction you're not sure exists on any map. East, south, wet, dear God stop, probably. The rigging whips like a serpent on amphetamines. One unlucky crewman gets slapped across the face by a line and flung into a barrel of eels. This is not a metaphor. That actually happened. The eels are upset. He apologizes. You duck instinctively, unsure if the ropes will suddenly decide you're next. Below deck, it's worse. Water pours in from every direction. You try to help bail it out using buckets, helmets, your hat, anything. The floor sloshes underfoot. Barrels roll. Rats scramble to higher ground with better evacuation plans than the crew. The bilge pump groans like it's dying, probably because it is. Then comes the wave. Oh yes, the wave. Every storm has one. The mother of all aquatic gut punches. It rises out of the ocean like a vengeful skyscraper and hurls itself onto the ship with the grace of an angry whale. You don't see it coming. 1 second, you're shouting at Jenkins to tie down a crate. The next, you're airborne. Briefly. Then you land on the deck with a thud and slide 20 feet into a pile of soggy rope and shattered ego. The mast cracks. The crew screams. Water floods your nose and ears and possibly your soul. For a moment, you're underwater on a ship that's still above water. Physics is taking a smoke break. You cough. You bleed. You continue to exist through sheer, stubborn inertia. When the wave finally retreats, it takes half your supplies and Jenkins' pants. Jenkins does not notice. He is currently wrapped around a cannon and reciting nursery rhymes to cope. You offer him a nod of solidarity. The captain yells, "Secure the yardarms!" Someone yells back, "Secure your mother," and is immediately slapped by both wind and guilt. The sails flap wildly, barely holding. A second crack announces that one of the masts has snapped like a breadstick at a particularly tragic dinner. Still, the ship floats. Barely. Somehow. You find yourself huddled under a half-tarp near the quarterdeck. Everything is soaked. Your boots squelch. Your brain squelches. The rain shows no signs of stopping. The storm has decided that this ship, specifically, offends it on a deeply personal level. You mutter a prayer to any god willing to accept soggy bribes. You promise to stop stealing rum. You promise to stop plotting minor mutinies. You even promise to apologize to Jenkins for that comment about his singing. The storm howls louder in reply. Message received. You vomit again, by morning, assuming it is morning, and not some eternal twilight of damp suffering. The worst of the storm has passed. The sky turns from apocalyptic charcoal to slightly less threatening pewter. And for a moment, you dare to believe you might survive. Then you try to stand. Your body protests in a dozen languages. Your knees crack, your back aches, and something behind your left eye pulses like it's housing a very upset sea snail. You are soaked, sore, and spiritually compromised. Half the crew lies motionless across the deck like shipwreck survivors who forgot to shipwreck. Jenkins is one of them. He's still muttering to himself, but he's upgraded from nursery rhymes to what you think is a haiku about drowning. You offer him a thumbs up. He moans and rolls over. His pants are still missing. You survey the damage. One mast is gone entirely, snapped clean at the base like a breadstick in a tavern brawl. Ropes dangle from the sails like the aftermath of a failed puppet show. A barrel of salted fish has exploded, and now the entire stern smells like desperation and low-grade cat food. Seagulls circle overhead, cackling like they're in on the joke. The captain emerges from his cabin with the casual energy of someone who slept through the apocalypse. His hair is dry, his boots are polished. He sips something from a pewter mug and calls it character-building weather. You have never wanted to mutiny more than in this moment. He calls for a damage report. No one moves. He calls again. A single hand rises. A cabin boy missing both boots and most of his dignity. "We lost the mizzenmast, sir," he croaks, "and Jenkins' trousers." The captain nods solemnly, as though both losses are of equal strategic importance. Repairs begin. You are handed a hammer and some rope and told to make yourself useful. This is problematic because you're not sure which part of the ship you're supposed to hit or tie. You nod like you understand. Everyone does this. It's a survival tactic. You spend the next 3 hours pretending to fix things while quietly crying into your shirt. You reattach a loose plank using a nail and sheer optimism. It holds. You feel pride. Then the plank falls off. You feel something much darker. Lunch is served, if you can call it that. Salt pork, somehow soggier than usual. Biscuits that now double as waterproof coasters. One of the barrels was breached by seawater, so everything tastes faintly of brine and regret. Still, you eat. Not because you're hungry, but because chewing distracts you from the gnawing realization that you chose this life. The captain hosts a morale-boosting speech on deck. It's difficult to hear over the creaking wood, the clatter of repairs, and Jenkins' ongoing existential spiral. The gist of the speech is, "We're alive, and that's victory enough." You squint at him through salt-stung eyes and wonder if he actually believes it, or if this is just the rum talking. That night, sleep is not rest. It is unconsciousness purchased at the cost of total exhaustion. Your hammock smells like mildew and betrayal. It sways gently with the ocean's rhythm, which now feels less like a lullaby and more like being rocked by a drunk uncle with boundary issues. Dreams come in brief flashes. Water, lightning, someone shouting your name, Jenkins trying to bite a seagull. You wake up once to find a crab sitting near your head. You don't scream, you just nod at the crab and go back to sleep. It's that kind of day. The next morning the sun rises. A faint, watery thing, more suggestion than presence. The sea has calmed to a low grumble. Birds return to the sky. Life resumes aboard the ship as though none of the past 24 hours happened. The crew limps around with bruises, cuts, and varying degrees of psychological damage, but no one speaks of the storm. You do, however, overhear a new recruit whisper, "That wasn't so bad," and you nearly throw him overboard on principle. The ship sails on, repaired, if only slightly. Your faith in the ocean? Less so. You now understand why seasoned pirates drink before breakfast. It's not for fun. It's damage control. You stand at the railing staring at the waves. They look calm, innocent. You know better. You know what they hide. You mutter a curse at the water. A wave splashes you in reply. Touché. But deep down, you understand. You're still here. So is the ship. And while the sea may hate you personally, you've survived round 1. You just hope there's not a round 2. Land. Sweet, glorious land. You stagger down the gangplank like a newborn giraffe, legs unaccustomed to anything that doesn't sway or try to kill you. The port town smells like fish guts, horse sweat, and warm bread. You ignore the first 2 and chase the third with the desperation of someone who hasn't smelled anything edible in weeks. You made it. You survived the storm, the mouldy biscuits, Jenkins' night terrors, and the general indignity of open sea hygiene. Your reward? 1 glorious day of shore leave. Within 5 minutes, you're broke. The dockside is a blur of shouting vendors, musical drunks, and street urchins with the pickpocketing reflexes of jungle cats. You buy a half-sour mango, a warm pint of something the vendor swears is rum but might actually be fermented crab water, and a single meat pie. The meat is ambiguous. But it's hot and not weevil-infested, which raises it to 5-star cuisine by pirate standards. You stroll through the town trying to look tough but approachable, charming but dangerous. The pirate's paradox. Instead, you just look lost and itchy. A man with no teeth offers to sell you real French socks. You decline. He follows you for 3 blocks anyway. The tavern is where it all goes wrong. It's dimly lit, poorly ventilated, and louder than a cannon demonstration. In other words, it's perfect. You push through the crowd, order a drink with the last of your coins, and find yourself wedged between a woman who claims she can see your soul and a man who smells like fish stew and betrayal. Everyone is drinking like they're trying to forget something. You join them. By your 3rd cup of regret, you're best friends with a Welshman named Owain who insists he once married a mermaid. You nod solemnly. In this place, anything seems possible. Around midnight, the brawl begins. No one knows who started it. Maybe someone looked at someone else's hat too aggressively. Maybe it was Jenkins, who's now flailing in the corner with a chair leg and shouting, "I am the storm." You duck, roll, and accidentally punch a priest. He forgives you, then knees you in the stomach. When it's over, the tavern is a war zone of broken mugs, bruised egos, and people sleeping in puddles of what you hope is beer. You think about leaving. You don't. Instead, you wake up the next morning with a black eye, 1 boot, and a mysterious tattoo of a pineapple on your shoulder. There's a goat in the room. You have no memory of how either of you got there. A woman stomps in, throws a bucket of water on you, and screams something about marrying her daughter and stealing her pig. You apologize. She hits you with the bucket. The goat headbutts your knee. You limp away from the situation, muttering promises to never drink again, which last exactly until lunchtime. Back on the street, you discover that during your tavern escapades, someone lifted your purse, your 2nd boot, and, insult of insults, your hat. You also seem to have contracted at least 3 new skin conditions. One of them might be sentient. You spend the rest of the afternoon chasing rumours of where your crewmates ended up. Jenkins is in jail for biting a constable. The captain's been spotted dancing with 2 opera singers and a sword swallower. Owain claims he was abducted by a local cult and briefly declared their god. You believe him. You stumble into the apothecary, looking for a cure to whatever's currently turning your elbow green. The apothecary gives you a bottle of something that smells like roasted despair and charges you 4 times the going rate. You drink it. It burns like betrayal but seems to help. You only cry a little. Dinner is a handful of roasted peanuts and a spoonful of someone else's stew. You don't ask, you don't care. Your stomach thanks you anyway. By nightfall, you're back on the ship. The familiar scent of rope, salt, and low expectations welcomes you like a punch to the nose. You collapse into your hammock, still damp, still lumpy, and exhale the kind of sigh usually reserved for funerals and overdue taxes. You survived shore leave. Somehow. You close your eyes and vow to never step foot on land again unless absolutely necessary. Or unless there's pie. Definitely for pie. You'd think 1 night of poorly made decisions would be enough. But pirates, much like raccoons and toddlers, don't learn from experience. Morning comes with the grace of a cannonball through a church window. The sun stabs your eyeballs. Your head hums like a swarm of angry hornets. You vaguely remember dancing on a table and declaring yourself king of tarts. You're not sure if that was a dessert reference or something worse. You lurch upright in your hammock. Something crunches beneath you. It's a crab. How? Why? No time to ask questions. You've got to find the rest of your crew, and possibly return the goat you definitely did not intend to steal. The port looks different in daylight, less charming, more tragic. The streets are littered with broken glass, lost hats, and puddles of optimism. Number. That's vomit. Jenkins emerges from a barrel with a black eye and a chicken feather in his beard. He gives you a solemn nod and says, "I've seen things." Then he vomits into a hat that may or may not be yours. You round up the surviving crew. A few are missing teeth. One is missing pants. Two swear they eloped with the same tavern wench, which is awkward because she turns out to be the innkeeper's son in a wig. The captain's voice can be heard down the alley, reciting poetry to a mule. He insists the mule gets him. Before heading back to the ship, the quartermaster reminds you that you still have supplies to gather. A grocery run, but for pirates. Your shopping list: salted meat, hardtack, gunpowder, rum, leeches, and whatever disease-resistant fruit might exist in this godforsaken hemisphere. You don't even know what half these things look like, so you buy everything that smells less awful than Jenkins' socks. At the market, a woman tries to sell you a monkey with a suspiciously intelligent expression. You decline. The monkey frowns, flips you off, and steals your last coin. You chase him through 3 alleys before falling into a barrel of fermented eels. You emerge smelling like regret and seafood stew. Later, while lugging a sack of salt pork back to the docks, you realize your arm has developed a rash in the shape of South America. A local healer offers a remedy, a blend of ground beetle wings and rum. You're not sure if it's medicine or a cocktail. You drink it anyway. Your tongue goes numb for 7 hours. You try to find time for a proper bath. You end up standing in a tub while a child throws lukewarm water at you from a ladle. The soap smells like burnt lemons. You feel dirtier after. As evening sets in, you gather with your crew for one final night of land-based tomfoolery. You swear you'll keep it civil. Then someone challenges Jenkins to an arm wrestling match against a local wrestler who turns out to be a woman named Helga with arms like tree trunks. Jenkins wins, but only because she gets distracted by someone shouting, "Free mead." The celebrations get out of hand. Someone sets a laundry cart on fire. A pig is declared mayor. You learn how to juggle knives for approximately 45 seconds before requiring stitches. By midnight, you're sitting on a crate with a busted lip, 1 sock, and a full-body hangover. You feel accomplished. Then comes the worst part, boarding the ship again. The captain blows his whistle, an actual whistle, made of bone, because he's dramatic like that, and the crew shuffles aboard like hungover zombies. The first mate counts heads. Someone's missing. You look around. No sign of one-eyed Tom, just a note pinned to a barrel. Found true love. Her name is Brandy. She's a barmaid and/or a dog. Will write. You shrug. That's about as happy an ending as any pirate can hope for. As you leave the harbour, the townspeople gather to wave goodbye. Some are cheering. Most are throwing rotten vegetables. You duck a cabbage and feel an odd sort of pride. You've survived another shore leave, barely. Back on the sea, you return to your duties, swabbing decks, hoisting sails, trying not to die. But now you do it with new scars, several unresolved rashes, and a goat tooth in your pocket you have no memory of acquiring. Your stomach rumbles. Jenkins passes you a biscuit. It's hard as a brick and tastes faintly of sadness, but it's familiar, comforting even. You bite down, break a molar, and smile. Home sweet home. It starts with a twitch, a sharp pulse in your jaw, subtle at first, like a mosquito whispering insults to your molars. You poke your cheek with your tongue, nothing obvious. You ignore it. You've survived hangovers, mutinous soup, and Helga the arm wrestler. What's a little toothache? By dawn, it's no longer whispering, it's screaming. The entire left side of your face has declared war. You try to chew a piece of salt pork and nearly black out. Jenkins offers his condolences and half a bottle of rum. You accept. It helps. Until it doesn't. Within hours, the pain climbs the ranks from annoyance to existential crisis. The captain, hearing your groans, informs you of the ship's standard dental protocol: punch, pliers, prayer. You laugh. They don't. The quartermaster rolls up his sleeves. A small crowd gathers on deck. Pirate dentistry is not just medicine. It's entertainment. Wagers are placed. Jenkins bets you'll cry before the first yank. You bet you'll pass out. Everyone's a winner, technically. The tools are laid out on a rum barrel like a buffet of suffering. A rusty nail, a bent spoon, some coarse string, and, for flair, a small pistol. The quartermaster assures you it's for comfort. Not yours. His. In case you bite me, he grins. They sit you on an upturned crate and offer a choice. Rum or more rum. You go with both. 2 swigs later, your gums are numb, but your dignity is very much awake and deeply concerned. Step 1. They try the string trick. Loop around the tooth, tie it to the mast, and let the next wave do the work. The knot slips. Instead of your tooth, they yank part of your lip. The crew howls with laughter. You weep. Salt and blood taste the same when mixed with humiliation. Step 2. Brute force. The spoon is jammed into your mouth by a man who smells like pickled despair. He's not a doctor. He's not even sober. He mutters something about getting under the root and starts digging like your mouth is hiding buried treasure. The pain hits your spine like a lightning bolt. You scream so hard the seagulls fly off. Jenkins collects his winnings. The captain watches, amused. "When I had a bad tooth," he says. "They shot it out." You stare at him. Surely he's joking. He's not. The quartermaster loads the pistol with powder, no ball, just air and spite. He angles it near your face. "Relax," he says. "It's very precise." Someone behind him mutters, "Last guy ended up with an ear infection and a concussion." You start to rise. Jenkins holds you down. "For science," he whispers. Boom. The blast knocks you backwards. You see stars, possibly ancestors. You come to 10 seconds later with your tooth still intact and a small scorch mark on your eyebrow. The crew erupts in applause. Jenkins holds up a charred splinter. "I think we got something." You didn't. The pain's worse now. Your gums throb in Morse code. The next plan? "Let it rot," says the cook. "Eventually it'll fall out, like my faith in humanity." That night, you lie in your hammock, face swollen like a ripe plum. Every creak of the ship sends a fresh wave of agony through your jaw. You consider throwing yourself overboard just to end it, but the thought of hitting water with a head injury stops you. That, and the sharks. In your delirium, you imagine a future where people have proper dentists, clean tools, chairs that don't creak like torture devices, maybe even painkillers. You dream of minty freshness and toothbrushes that aren't made of horsehair and broken dreams. By morning, the tooth has shifted slightly. You wiggle it with your tongue and feel a sickening crack. Progress. Jenkins volunteers to help, with a hammer this time. You decline. He swings it anyway. He misses. You black out. When you wake, your mouth tastes like iron and failure, but the tooth is gone. A victory. You hold it in your palm like a war trophy. The crew cheers. Jenkins buys you a drink. You decline. Liquid hurts now. The captain slaps you on the back and says, "See? Told you we had a system." You nod slowly. He winks and adds, "Next time, we do leeches." You smile, or try to. Half your face refuses. So, now you've lost the tooth. Victory? Maybe. Survival? Barely. You spend the next day lurching around the deck like someone who's just fought a kraken barehanded and lost to the kraken's distant cousin, toothache. Every heartbeat throbs in your gum socket like a tiny drummer boy auditioning for war. Eating is no longer a pleasure. It's a high-stakes gamble. You eye your food like it owes you money. The ship's cook gives you a knowing nod and slides you a special bowl, salt broth with bits of something formerly solid floating in it. You try to drink it. The heat touches the raw nerve like a branding iron dipped in betrayal. Speaking is worse. Every syllable feels like punishment. You attempt to tell Jenkins to shove off. Comes out as mfk, rrr. He takes it personally and sulks. He tells everyone you're cursing him in ghost language. Someone throws salt over their shoulder. Another offers to exorcise you with rum. Your breath, by the way, has declared independence. It's a rotting mix of rum residue, dried blood, and that deep-in-the-jaw infection smell that makes dogs whimper. No one wants to stand downwind of you. Even the parrot avoids you. You've officially become that guy, the pirate with the haunted mouth. The crew gives you a new nickname, Gummy. You hate it. You also can't say it properly without slurring. Jenkins helpfully sketches you a pirate flag featuring a tooth with a red X through it. The others laugh. You don't. Not because you're offended, because laughing now feels like biting lightning. The captain, ever the motivational speaker, swings by and claps you on the shoulder hard enough to dislodge a vertebra. You'll toughen up, he says. When I had scurvy and lost half my teeth, I just learned to suck stew through a funnel. You don't ask where the funnel goes. At night, you try to sleep, but the ship creaks like it's whispering dental horror stories. You dream of smiling women offering apples and waking up to find your gums full of nails. You dream of your tooth crawling back into your mouth out of spite. You wake in a cold sweat. Or maybe it's fever. By day 3, the socket starts swelling. The cook says that's part of the process. The quartermaster says, infection builds character. Jenkins offers to pee on it. You seriously consider it for 2 seconds before banishing him to the other side of the deck. You make your way to the edge of the ship and stare into the ocean. It stares back. You begin whispering your will to the sea. It mostly consists of, tell my mother I'm sorry, and please bury me somewhere with soft food. That's when the real fun begins. The swelling spreads to your jaw. Your speech now consists entirely of humming and frantic gestures. Someone suggests sign language. Someone else thinks you've joined a monastic vow of silence. Jenkins claims you're possessed again. The ship's priest tries an exorcism using a dead fish and a poorly pronounced Latin prayer. The fish slaps your face mid-ritual. You start crying, or maybe just drooling. Hard to tell. Day 4. The swelling finally begins to retreat. Miraculously, your jaw stops screaming every second. You can sort of chew soft bread again, provided you soak it in broth for 15 minutes. A passing crewman offers you his half-chewed biscuit out of pity. You thank him, silently. Everyone treats you a little differently now. You're part medical marvel, part cautionary tale. Gummy made it, they whisper. Didn't even lose the whole jaw. Jenkins adds, though he smells like a dying eel in summer. You don't even argue. You just point to your mostly healed face and give the crew your best attempt at a grin. It looks like a nervous wince. No one's impressed. Later, you overhear a new recruit complaining about a splinter. You limp over, open your mouth to display the fresh scar inside, and give him a look that says, you don't know pain. He quiets down. That night, he offers you his last piece of hardtack. It's a peace offering. You try to chew it. Mistake. The scar twitches. The pain returns. You throw the hardtack into the ocean, where it sinks like guilt. Eventually, the story of your oral ordeal becomes legend on the ship. It gets embellished. In some versions, the tooth had a second tooth growing inside it. In others, it bit back. You don't correct anyone. Why would you? Let them fear your mouth. One evening, the captain raises his mug and toasts to survival, pain, and Gummy's noble gums. Everyone laughs. You laugh too. Carefully. You sit by the railing, ocean breeze in your face, your jaw sore but functioning. You sip warm broth and try not to think about molars. The stars are out. Jenkins is singing badly. The ship groans with its usual rhythm, and you almost feel peace. Then the cook shouts, next up, boil on Jenkins' butt cheek. Who's got a knife? And just like that, the moment passes. Let's rewind. Somewhere back on the mainland, probably in a tavern full of drunken liars, someone told you that pirates are rolling in treasure. Chests bursting with gold, jewels in goblets, pearls so big they require their own hammock. That's why you signed up, right? For the riches, the glitter, the high life. Fast forward to now. You are elbow deep in wet sand, digging a hole that suspiciously smells like something died in it 6 months ago. The treasure map you're following was hand-drawn by a one-eyed man who spelled north with 2 Fs. You've been digging for 5 hours, and all you've found so far is a spoon, a nail, and what may or may not be the tooth of the last guy who tried this. Also, you've been bitten by a crab. Twice. Captain Flintlock, real name Greg, but Captain Flintlock sounds cooler when recruiting idiots like you, stands above you, shouting helpful things like "dig faster" and "I swear it was right here, lads." His breath smells like bad decisions and fermented despair. Around you, the rest of the crew is half-heartedly poking at the sand. One guy's asleep in the hole he's supposed to be excavating. Another is arguing with Jenkins, yes, him again, about whether a mossy rock counts as treasure if it looks vaguely like a coin from a distance and you squint. The map itself? A nightmare. It's less ancient parchment and more someone's napkin sketch from a drunken brawl. It features multiple X marks, a drawing of what might be a palm tree or possibly a very surprised man, and a line that reads, "Beware the thing what stares." That last part has Jenkins on edge. He keeps turning around to see if anything's watching. You tell him it's probably just seagulls. He says seagulls don't stare like that. You say they do. He pulls a dagger. You pretend to find another spoon and walk away. Lunch break, hardtack again. Because treasure might be fictional, but digestive suffering is eternal. You chew your brick slowly, trying to imagine it's something better, like sand or gravel. Jenkins offers to trade you his for a chunk of mystery meat he found near a tree root. You politely decline, then impolitely hurl. As the sun reaches its cook your eyeballs angle, morale dips to somewhere between lost at sea and accidentally married a goat. The captain pulls out his compass, which spins like a drunk ballerina. "Ah," he says, completely seriously. "It's near." Someone starts digging faster. Someone else throws up from heat stroke. You find a shell and pretend to be excited. No one cheers. Then, a thunk. Your shovel hits something solid. The crew gasps. Captain Flintlock's eyes go wide. You all gather around the hole like it's about to give birth to fortune itself. Hands tremble. Hope rises. You unearth a wooden box. It's old. It's rotted. It smells suspiciously like fermented crab urine. But it's a box. That counts. Flintlock pries it open with a dramatic flourish. Inside, a rusted chamber pot, 3 broken combs, and a crab that looks more confident than any of you. It waves a claw like it's mocking your entire existence. Jenkins tries to duel it. He loses. The crab scuttles off with his dagger. The captain blinks. "Maybe the real treasure was the journey," he says. Someone tries to throw him in the hole. The crew begins muttering. Some talk of mutiny again. Others just sit down and stare into the horizon like it owes them an apology. You, personally, begin reassessing every life choice that led you to this precise moment. Sunburnt, dehydrated, holding a rusty comb and listening to a man in a feathered hat insist the map was probably just upside down. Evening approaches, no treasure, no glory, just itchy bites, a broken back, and sand in places sand was never meant to go. And then it starts to rain, not a soft drizzle, not a cleansing pour, a full-on tropical tantrum, buckets from the sky, lightning, thunder. The box, your one symbol of hope, fills with water and floats away. The combs follow. Even the crab returns briefly to spit metaphorical disdain in your direction before skittering off again, dagger still in tow. Flintlock tries to rally spirits with a rousing speech. It contains the words glory, destiny, and I definitely didn't misread the map. It is met with a collective groan and at least one pair of middle fingers. You sleep under a tree that leaks. Your boots are soaked. Your blanket is a sack. You cradle the chamber pot lid like a souvenir and try to ignore Jenkins weeping softly into a pile of wet hardtack. In the distance, lightning illuminates the silhouette of your ship. For a moment, it looks like freedom. Then you remember it smells like socks and has no toilets. Treasure? That's cute. Day 2 of the Great Treasure Hunt begins with optimism, which is weird because optimism hasn't been seen on this ship since Jenkins tried to flirt with a lighthouse. Still, Captain Flintlock insists the true location is just a few paces east of where we almost died yesterday. You'd ask for clarification, but that would require emotional investment. Instead, you dig. Again. This time with blisters layered like geological strata. The new digging spot is worse. More roots, more rocks, and, bonus, a wasp nest. Jenkins finds it, with his face. The map, by the way, now has a fresh hole in it, courtesy of Jenkins' panic dagger. It's okay though. According to the captain, it adds character and also might reveal a hidden clue. Spoiler, it doesn't. It just makes it harder to read, which may be an improvement, honestly. The crew splits into factions. Team This Is Fake spends the day drinking and muttering curses in various dialects. Team It's Definitely Real continues to dig with the religious fervour of people one bad moment away from founding a new cult. Team I'm Just Here for the Crabs wanders off to find snacks. You're stuck in the middle, too tired to argue and too sunburned to feel anything anymore. Your hands are raw, your eyebrows are peeling, your will to live is on vacation. Then something happens. A shout. Real, sharp, triumphant. Everyone sprints toward the source, except Jenkins, who's busy extracting a wasp stinger from somewhere we won't discuss. There, at the centre of a freshly excavated pit, lies another box. Bigger, older, covered in suspicious barnacles and one extremely hostile lizard. The captain shoos it off with his hat. The crew forms a circle, tense with anticipation. He opens it slowly, dramatically. You hold your breath. Inside, a sack of rocks. Not gold nuggets, not precious gems, just rocks. Round, heavy, wet. The crew stares. One pirate sobs. Jenkins quietly whispers, "Maybe they're metaphorical." You consider metaphorically punching him. Then the captain, eyes twitching with something between desperation and performance anxiety, reaches in and pulls out a small pouch. The crowd leans in. He unties the string. Inside, 3 silver coins. That's it. 3. Not ancient Spanish doubloons, not cursed Aztec artifacts. Just 3 coins. Mildly shiny, mildly disappointing. Jenkins does the math aloud. That's like a 1/12 of a bar tab. A fight almost breaks out over who gets what. Jenkins volunteers to be treasurer. Everyone laughs until someone throws a shovel at him. The pouch is handed to the captain for safekeeping, which means it's going to disappear faster than the last bottle of rum. Suddenly someone finds a bone. Human? Probably. Maybe. No one wants to test it. It joins the collection of weird discoveries. A doll's head, a rusted buckle, a glass eye, and what appears to be a petrified ham sandwich. As morale plummets, rain begins again. Of course it does. The wind howls. The sky opens. Jenkins sneezes directly onto the map, which disintegrates like dignity in a brothel. The hole floods. The silver pouch is almost lost. The captain curses Poseidon. Poseidon, clearly offended, sends a crab to bite him. Back aboard the ship, wet, bruised and spiritually bankrupt, you change into your least damp shirt. It smells like mildew and sadness. Dinner is dry beans and the shattered hope of riches. The crew eats in silence, punctuated only by the sound of Jenkins trying to dry a ruined corner of the map with his breath. Later that night, you and a few others gather by the dim lantern in the cargo hold. Someone quietly hums a sea shanty. Jenkins mutters something about how treasure is symbolic. You hurl a spoon at him. You lie back and close your eyes. You imagine a chest full of glittering gold, ruby-studded goblets, silk-lined hats, and perfectly grilled fish. You sigh. Then you remember today's finds, rocks, a crab, and tetanus in a box. In the corner, the captain mumbles in his sleep. "We're close. I can feel it." He rolls over and knocks over a bucket of salted herring. The stench hits like a slap. You decide if this is treasure, you'd prefer poverty. The next morning, you wake up to shouting again. Not because someone found something, but because Jenkins is missing. Someone suggests he ran off with the coins. Someone else suggests the crab took him as tribute. You don't care. You hope he's happy, or lost, or both. Flintlock declares they'll try a new island tomorrow. "Better luck," he says, full of false cheer and probable syphilis. You tie your boots tighter, not because you believe there's treasure out there, but because you know there are more holes to dig, more bugs to fight, more crabs to be insulted by. You've become a pirate, all right. Not a rich one, not a glamorous one, but a sunburned, semi-malnourished, emotionally compromised treasure enthusiast with PTSD from digging. Treasure. That's adorable. Congratulations, Captain. You did it. You climbed the greasy, blood-slicked ladder of nautical success. Of course, by climbed, we mean you happened to be standing closest when the last captain fell overboard after a suspicious banana peel incident. But semantics don't matter anymore. You've got the hat now. It doesn't fit. That's your first problem. It's too large, smells like rum and betrayal, and one of the feathers has lice. The crew looks at you, waiting for orders. You clear your throat, which accomplishes nothing except drawing attention to the fact that you don't know how to say anything that isn't "I" or "please don't stab me." "Set a course," you shout, trying to sound bold. The helmsman stares at you like you just asked him to lasso the moon. "Which heading, Captain?" Forward." You are, in that moment, exactly as qualified as a melon with a fake mustache, and everyone knows it. The crew starts grumbling almost immediately. You thought being captain meant respect. What it actually means is everyone blames you for everything. Sails ripped? Your fault. Food ran out? You should have planned better. Jenkins stubbed his toe on a cannon? Well, clearly your leadership is to blame. Speaking of Jenkins, he's begun referring to himself as acting quarter captain, which is not a real rank, but he insists it's temporary in case something unfortunate befalls you. He says this while sharpening a spoon. You try to remember what captains actually do. Yell a lot, mostly. Look through a spyglass dramatically. Occasionally shout, "Hard to port," for no reason. You attempt all three before lunch and are rewarded with eye rolls, mutiny-flavoured glares, and a broken spyglass, because someone, Jenkins, forgot to remove the cork. Navigation is another issue. You find the ship's charts rolled up in a damp barrel under a sack of mouldy lemons. They're hand-drawn, wildly inaccurate, and one is labelled, "Definitely not a kraken here." You spread them out and pretend to understand the squiggly lines while the navigator naps under a net and whispers about sea monsters. Eventually, someone points out you've been sailing in a circle for the past 6 hours. You look over the railing and see your own floating chamber pot. It waves mockingly. The crew pretends not to notice, except Jenkins. He notices everything. Desperate to assert authority, you decide to inspect the lower deck. It's worse than you imagined. There's a suspicious leak near the gunpowder barrels. The rats have formed a militia. The cargo hold smells like fermented regret. You try to rally morale. "Keep up the good work, lads," you shout. A bucket falls on your head. By evening, a storm rolls in, because of course it does. The sky darkens, the sea churns, the sails snap like angry towels in a hurricane. You run around yelling, "Secure the rigging!" even though you wouldn't know a rigging from a sausage link. Jenkins ties himself to the mast and sings a shanty about your inevitable demise. The wheel jams. The compass spins like it's possessed. Lightning strikes somewhere too close for comfort. You scream. The crew screams. The parrot screams. Jenkins offers to relieve you of command for the good of the ship. You scream louder. By some miracle, read dumb luck, the storm passes. The ship is battered but afloat. You've lost 2 barrels of rum, 1 small cannon, and your last shred of dignity. The crew stares at you in silence. You raise your hands. "I have learned valuable lessons." They continue to stare. "About leadership," you add. More silence. "And possibly carpentry." Someone coughs. Jenkins claps slowly. You retreat to the captain's quarters. It's the same mouldy broom closet, but now with the extra burden of responsibility and a slightly better chair. You sit, soaked and shaking, and try to write in the captain's log. Day 1 of my glorious command. Morale, abysmal. Navigation, creative. Crew loyalty, conditional. Jenkins, sharpening spoons again. You close the book and stare at the ceiling. You wonder how long you'll last. A day? A week? Until someone decides you're better as ballast? There's a knock at the door. It's Jenkins. "Permission to speak freely, Captain." You nod. "I give you 3 days." He closes the door with a smile that could curdle milk. You lie back. You breathe. You mutter a quiet prayer to any god still listening. You are the captain now. May Neptune have mercy on your soul. The good thing about being captain, you have your own quarters. The bad thing, your own quarters now smell like a damp boot left inside a dying whale. Also, privacy is a myth. Within 5 minutes of sunrise, 3 people barge in, 2 argue about who gets to speak first, and 1 hands you a dead rat as a gift. For luck, he says. You do not feel lucky. Your first official act as captain, mediating a dispute over who stole whose socks. It escalates into a knife fight. You end it by threatening to throw them both overboard with the rat. 1 cries, the other offers you a sock. Later that morning, you attempt to hold a meeting. You sit at the barrel you've decided is now your captain's table, while the crew grumbles and gnaws on dried fish that smells like burnt pencils. You try to speak with authority. You fail. We need discipline, you say. Blank stares. We need purpose. Someone yawns. We need rum? They cheer. Jenkins narrows his eyes. The rum is rationed, of course, but this crew doesn't do math. You hand out mugs and hope the goodwill outweighs the hangovers. You realise too late that Jenkins is drinking water and taking notes, probably planning your ousting via spreadsheet and dagger. By midday, the ship is quiet, suspiciously quiet. You find 2 men asleep in the crow's nest, one fishing with a spoon and another writing what he claims is a memoir of moral clarity from within the chaos. You take his quill and snap it in half. Down below, the bilge is filling. You assign a bucket brigade. It lasts 10 minutes before someone claims their arm is spiritually unwell. You personally demonstrate how to bail water using both hands and rage. Jenkins claps again. You are beginning to hate Jenkins. Night falls. The stars emerge. You gather your thoughts, your courage, and your crew for a nighttime navigation lesson. You point at the North Star. You dramatically declare, "That is our guide." "That's a ship lantern," someone says. You squint. It is, in fact, a ship lantern. Jenkins coughs, then mutters something about basic astronomy and your questionable lineage. The crew laughs. You do not. You retreat once more to your cabin. You find someone asleep in your hammock. You poke them. They vomit and roll over. You choose the floor. Your pillow is a boot. The next morning, disaster strikes again. The rudder has cracked. You call an emergency repair meeting. 3 carpenters show up, one of whom is actually the cook. You ask for planks. They give you a barrel lid. You ask for nails. They hand you a fishbone. The repairs take all day and involve duct tape made from eel skin and prayer. As you're inspecting the fix, a bird poops directly into your hat. The crew sees it. They begin calling you Captain Droppings. It spreads. You try to outlaw the nickname. It only becomes more popular. The next day brings fog. Thick, blinding fog. Your ship drifts like a drunk on ice skates. You strain to see anything beyond the railing. Jenkins suggests using the bell to warn other ships. You agree. He hits it every 15 seconds for the next 6 hours. You develop a twitch in your left eye. Eventually, the fog clears. A small merchant ship is spotted on the horizon. Your crew looks at you. "Orders, Captain." You panic. This is your first real chance to be an actual pirate. You hesitate. Approach. Quietly. They grin. They love violence. You forgot that part. They board like wild animals. Swords out. Teeth missing, yelling things that rhyme with loot and boot. You stand at the helm and pretend to strategize while mostly praying you don't have to stab anyone personally. 10 minutes later, they return with a barrel of salted eels, a sack of turnips, and a violin. You ask what happened to the crew. "They surrendered after Jenkins sang at them," someone says. "The violin is out of tune, the turnips are soft, the eels bite. Back on your ship, the celebration is brief. Jenkins insists on recording the plunder in the ledger, along with a note. Still no actual gold. Consider revising career path." The next morning, you wake to find a dagger stabbed into your cabin door. It's shaped like a question mark. Below it, a message. 3 days are up. You take a deep breath. You step out onto the deck. The sun rises. The crew stares. You shout, "All hands! Set sail for treasure!" They blink. "Any treasure in particular, Captain?" Jenkins asks. You pause. You raise the dead rat. We're following this. They laugh, some nervously. Jenkins mutters about madness, but they obey, because in the end, the captain isn't the smartest, strongest, or even the most sober. He's just the one still standing. For now. It begins with a shout from the crow's nest, a voice thick with fear and phlegm. Sails! Starboard! Big uns! You look up, squinting through salt-crusted lashes. On the horizon, like the ghost of justice itself, glides a British frigate. Sleek, orderly, intimidating. Everything your ship is not. Your vessel creaks like a drunk with bad knees. Theirs cuts through the waves like it has a point to prove. You shout, "Raise the black!" The crew hesitates. Someone sneezes. Then Jenkins, ever the eager one, ties the black flag to the rigging with unnecessary enthusiasm. It flaps in the wind like an invitation to be obliterated. In response, the frigate raises a cluster of flags and 50 cannons. You do some quick mental math. You have 2 cannons, one of which hasn't fired since the crab incident of last week. The other is currently being used as a clothesline. You order both readied anyway. You consider options. Flee? The wind is against you, the sails are half-patched, and the rudder groans when you even look at it funny. Fight? With what? Your most reliable weapon is Jenkins's sarcasm, and that only works on your crew. Negotiate? You once tried negotiating a bar tab with a goat. The goat won. That leaves one viable strategy: hide. You glance at the barrels stacked on deck. You briefly contemplate crawling into one. The irony of becoming pickled pirate jerky in your own cargo is not lost on you. Instead, you pace. You look captainly. That's all you can do right now. The crew looks to you, wide-eyed, waiting for orders you do not have. You wave your hand vaguely toward the helm and shout, "Adjust the thing, brace the ropes." The helmsman nods like that made sense. It did not. Below deck, chaos. Men stumble over one another, trying to load the cannons. Someone drops a shot ball on their foot and screams in 4 languages. The cook has tied a frying pan to his chest and declared himself ready for battle. You wish you had his confidence, or his frying pan. You climb to the quarterdeck and squint through your spyglass. The enemy grows larger. Flags snap in precise rhythm. Uniforms glitter. They're clean. How dare they be clean? They're signalling again, Jenkins mutters beside you. Can you read it? You ask. He squints. Something about surrender and consequences. You already hate this chapter of your life. You gather the crew, you stand atop an empty rum barrel and give a speech. Men, we are outgunned, outnumbered, and possibly out of time, but we are pirates. We fear no king. A cheer goes up, though it sounds more like an anxious whimper chorus. You continue. They may have numbers, but we have grit and guile and... Jenkins? He holds up a sign. Gonorrhea? He offers. No. Well, yes, but courage. Another half-hearted cheer. You brace for impact, literally, because the first cannonball slams into the water off your port side with a splash that soaks your dignity and half the deck. They're warning you. That's almost polite. You respond the only way you know how. You fire your one working cannon. It lurches, makes a sound like a cow giving birth, and launches a cannonball into the sea about 20 feet short. Jenkins sighs audibly. Another splash from the frigate. Closer. Brace! You yell. The crew dives, ducks, and one man simply sits down and closes his eyes. Then, impact. A shot tears through the mainsail, rips a hole in the deck, and sends a crate of apples, where did those come from, flying into the sea. The crate was labelled treasure in very poor handwriting. You lose 5 hats and 2 teeth in the blast. The crew panics. One tries to climb the mast. Another attempts to disguise himself as part of the railing. The cook is hiding in the stove. You stagger toward the helm. You grip the wheel. You turn to Jenkins. Any ideas? He says, we could surrender and become indentured T-boys. You shake your head. Number we are pirates. He nods. Then we die flamboyantly. A sudden silence falls over the crew. A long, heavy pause. Then someone mutters, maybe flamboyant dying isn't so bad. You glare. Fine, you snap. Let's show them how low-class, semi-diseased, barely functioning pirates handle proper navy etiquette. You raise your sword, you point it toward the enemy, you shout, "Fire the next shot," with feeling. The cannon misfires, the crew groans. You stand in the smoke, trying to look noble, though you just burned off half your eyebrow. As the enemy draws nearer, you feel a strange calm. Either you're about to die, or you're about to invent a new kind of maritime diplomacy involving panicked yelling and possibly nudity. Either way, the next part's going to be messy. Let's get one thing straight. You are not built for naval combat. You are built for looting unattended docks, minor intimidation, and drinking until your memory politely deletes itself. But the British Navy, they are built for order, discipline, and the systematic destruction of people like you. As their frigate looms closer, every plank of your ship seems to groan with existential regret. You bark orders that sound suspiciously like guesses. Reef the mainsail, brace the mizzenmast, somebody tie something important to something sturdy. Your men scramble in a blur of clumsy limbs and colourful swearing. The sails flap like panicked laundry. The ropes form knots that defy all known logic. Jenkins somehow ties himself to the gunwale and shouts, "I'm secured, Captain. Spiritually, at least." The enemy ship slows just enough to make a statement. They are not worried. You, on the other hand, are now visibly sweating through your coat, which would be impressive if the coat weren't mostly holes and mildew. You shout, "Prepare to be boarded," which is really pirate code for, "We are about to be thoroughly outclassed in every way." The crew draws weapons with varying degrees of confidence. One guy has a fork, another has taped 2 spoons together and insists it's a trident. You don't have the heart to argue. Then the grappling hooks fly, thick ropes thud against your railings. The frigate's soldiers begin swinging over like angry acrobats in coordinated trousers. You see polished boots, gleaming helmets, and teeth that suggest access to dental care. You want to run, but where? The ocean? The rats are already packing tiny suitcases. The first redcoat lands with a practiced roll and points a bayonet at Jenkins. Jenkins throws a sandwich at him. A fight erupts. Calling it a battle would be generous. It's more of a desperate flailing contest featuring cutlasses, accidental punches, and one crewmate who attempts to hypnotize the enemy with aggressive interpretive dance. You swing your sword at a naval officer. He parries effortlessly and says, "Nice form. Shame about everything else." You trip over a barrel. Someone shouts, "To the powder room." "Why?" another yells. "Because that's where the rum is." Priorities. Below deck, it's chaos. Gunpowder spills. Someone lights a lantern too close to the fuse pile. You make a mental note to stop trusting anyone with more than 2 teeth. Back on deck, the air is filled with smoke, shouting, and the oddly specific smell of burnt ham. One of your cannons finally fires, a miracle, and hits the frigate's rigging. Everyone cheers. Then the cannon backfires and knocks Jenkins into the sea. You're down a first mate, half a mast, and all your dignity. You spot the captain of the frigate across the chaos. A tall, well-groomed man, with a confident smirk, and the aura of someone who grew up with chairs that weren't nailed to the floor. He makes eye contact with you, raises a brow, then gestures like, "Shall we?" You raise your sword again. It's mostly for morale. He lunges. You parry, barely. The clang of metal rings out. You try to think of clever quips, but all that comes to mind is, "Nice buttons." He disarms you in 2 moves. Your sword skitters across the deck and lands in a pile of weevils. Great, now they're armed. You fall backward, winded. He places a boot on your chest. Not heavily, just enough to say, "You've lost, and also, I'm cleaner than you." "Any last words?" he asks. You wheeze. "This wasn't in the brochure." He almost smiles. Then a cannonball screams overhead and splashes between the ships. Both vessels rock violently. The frigate captain stumbles. You roll, grab a mop, and jab him in the knee. It's not honourable. It's not effective. But it's all you've got. He growls. "Seriously? A mop?" "It's symbolic," you pant. "Of what? You're not sure." More grappling lines snap. Smoke thickens. You lose track of your men. You hear Jenkins yelling from the water, "I found a crab. He's judging me." Eventually, the British commander sighs. This is ridiculous. You nod. Correct. He raises a hand. His men freeze. Enough, he shouts. Take the prisoners, secure the ship, and someone give this lunatic a towel. You are bound. Your crew is herded like damp, confused livestock. The battle is over. You lost. And honestly, that might be the best possible outcome. They tow your ship behind theirs, which is humiliating, but at least you're not fish food. As night falls, you sit on the deck of the frigate, tied up next to Jenkins, who's still wet and holding his crab. You know, he says, that crab might be a better captain than you. You nod. Probably. He smiles. Still beats accounting. You're not sure. But at least you're alive. Bruised, beaten, and maybe heading to a prison colony, but alive. Tomorrow, maybe you'll plot an escape. Or maybe you'll try to bribe someone with your last gold tooth. For now, you lean your head back and watch the stars, and quietly vow, never trust a brochure with a skull on it again. You are dragged off the ship in chains, smelling like mildew, cannon smoke, and poor decisions. The harbour crowd gathers like it's a holiday parade, only instead of floats and candy, it's shackles and last rites. A boy shouts, "That one's limping." Another laughs and throws a turnip. It hits you square in the dignity. You shuffle forward with your fellow crewmates, a line of defeated, sunburned, lice-ridden disappointments. Jenkins is ahead of you, muttering something about how he was just the cook. Which is technically true, but also technically nonsense, because he once tried to duel a goat over a spilled rum barrel. You arrive at a stone building with ivy creeping up the sides like Judgment, the courthouse, or, as the locals call it, where pirates go to try and fail at charm. You're hauled inside and thrown into a cell so cramped it feels like a broom closet with ambition. The floor is sticky. You hope it's just old beer. You pray it's just old beer. You sit, you wait, you contemplate your life choices. Spoiler, they were bad. Eventually the cell door creaks open. A guard with approximately 4 teeth and 0 warmth grunts, "Trial's up. Don't try anything funny." You try to smile. "I haven't done anything funny in years." He doesn't laugh. You're escorted into the courtroom, where the air smells of ink, mildew, and social inequality. A dozen powdered wigs line the benches, attached to men who look like they've never experienced joy. The judge sits above them, high on his bench, glaring down as if he's been personally offended by your entire existence. He adjusts his wig, clears his throat. "You are brought here today to answer for crimes against the crown, the church, and common decency." The crowd murmurs like a bunch of angry pigeons. Your lawyer is introduced. He's a man with a nose that enters the room a full second before he does. His robe is wrinkled, his shoes don't match, and his eyes say, "I lost 5 clients last week." You feel confident. "Name?" The judge barks. You hesitate. "Captain, He slams his gavel. "Your real name?" You sigh. "It's Edward, but most folks call me Oi you. Stop that." The courtroom chuckles. The judge does not. The charges are read. Theft, destruction of property, impersonating a naval officer. You only borrowed the hat. Assault with a broken bottle, a misunderstanding, resisting arrest. You tripped. And, most damning, being generally unwashed. Your lawyer stands. "Your Honour, I'd like to plead insanity on my client's behalf." You blink. "Wait, what?" He continues. "Clearly, no sane man would choose this lifestyle. Look at him. He smells like a barrel of fermented failure and has the complexion of a boiled lobster. This is not a criminal. This is a tragedy." You nod slowly. "That was beautiful, actually." The prosecution rises, a man in crisp robes and a face carved from judgment. He gestures toward you. "This man is a menace to trade routes, decency, and proper hygiene. He has no respect for law, order, or matching socks. I recommend hanging, or, if that's too merciful, community theatre." Gasps from the audience. Even Jenkins, watching from the back, mouths, "Not community theatre." Your defence rests after mumbling something about your troubled childhood and lack of positive male role models. Then comes the testimony. First witness, a merchant whose ship you accidentally liberated of its cargo. He points dramatically. That man stole my silks, my spices, and my pet parrot. The judge leans forward. What happened to the parrot? You raise a hand. In my defense, it left voluntarily. Second witness, a Navy officer. I found him attempting to flee dressed as a nun. You shrug. It worked for a little while. Third witness, your own quartermaster. He's not the worst captain I've had, but he did try to trade our anchor for rum. That was a good deal, you shout. The judge slams his gavel again. Silence, I've heard enough. The room quiets. You breathe shallowly. The judge peers at you, then reads from a scroll. Edward, also known as Oi you are hereby sentenced to be hanged by the neck until dead. The crowd erupts. You blink. That's official. Execution to take place at dawn, he continues. May God have mercy on your soul, because I, frankly, do not. You're hauled back to your cell, your legs suddenly aware of their mortality. Jenkins is waiting. Well? He asks. I'm going to die. He nods. So, same as always. You sit on the floor. The cell smells worse than before. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's fate. You stare out the tiny barred window, the sky going from blue to gold to black. You think of treasure maps, stormy nights, salted meat, and the one-eyed captain who could navigate by smell alone. You think of mistakes, of laughter, of chasing freedom with a crew of misfits who couldn't navigate feelings, let alone oceans. Tomorrow, you die. But tonight, you remember what it felt like to live. The dawn bell rings like a final insult. You're not ready. Who would be? The guard stomps to your cell with a ring of keys and a smirk like he's already rehearsed your fall. Up, he says. You rise. Your legs wobble like they know what's coming. Your breath smells like despair and stale hardtack, but dignity's already out the window, so why stop now? He unlocks your chains with ceremonial flair, like he's unsheathing Excalibur. Try not to embarrass yourself, he mutters. I already did, you reply. I joined this crew. You're marched down a stone corridor where the moss grows thick and the rats look judgmental. Jenkins is leaning against a wall, arms crossed. They're hanging you, huh? Seems like it. He nods solemnly, then adds, If you see my ex-wife in hell, tell her I'm still using her toothbrush. The guards drag you onward. Out in the courtyard, a wooden platform rises like a monument to bad timing. The gallows stands proud, grim, and disturbingly well-oiled. A noose sways gently in the sea breeze like it's been looking forward to this. People gather, lots of them, some eating fruit, some holding their children, a few taking bets. One vendor is selling roasted peanuts, which seems both entrepreneurial and sociopathic. The hangman adjusts the rope like he's fluffing a pillow. He's wearing a sack over his head. Not for mystery, just because no one wants to recognize him at the pub later. You're marched up the steps. Each plank creaks under your weight. It's not the sound that scares you, it's how final it feels. The judge arrives, flanked by city guards and a man holding a scroll with your name badly spelled. The executioner pats the rope. Neck or chest? Pardon? Some people like it high, some like it low, all the same in the end. You stare at him. He shrugs. Suit yourself. The crowd murmurs. A child points at you and says, Mummy, he doesn't look very piratey. Her mother nods. That's because he was terrible at it, darling. The priest approaches. He's got a cross in one hand and breath like fermented onions. Would you like to confess? You think. A lot comes to mind. I once kissed the captain's wife, you say. Everyone gasps. You pause. Well, I thought she was the captain's wife. Turned out it was just Jenkins in a bonnet. A different kind of gasp this time. Jenkins, watching from the crowd, yells, It was cold! The bonnet was practical. The hangman tightens the noose around your neck with the gentle grace of someone tying a ribbon on spoiled meat. It scratches. You wince. The judge steps forward. Edward, known pirate, coward, and all-around disappointment, you have been sentenced to death by hanging. May this serve as a lesson to others. Crime does not pay. You mutter, Neither did piracy, apparently. The crowd chuckles. The judge scowls. Any last words? The priest asks. You glance around, at the sky, at the sea, at the rope. You take a deep breath. Yes, you say. I regret nothing. Beat. Except maybe that time I tried to brush my teeth with gunpowder. That was unwise. You close your eyes. The trapdoor creaks. Then a horn blows. The crowd turns. A man in uniform storms forward, waving a scroll and shouting, "Stop! By order of the Admiralty!" Everyone freezes, including you. The judge sighs. What is it now? The officer clears his throat. The Crown has decided to commute this man's sentence, effective immediately. The crowd erupts in boos and thrown fruit. One particularly offended tomato nails you in the cheek. Why? The judge demands. The officer unrolls the scroll. He's being conscripted into the Royal Navy. Silence. Even the hangman looks confused. You open one eye. Wait, so I'm not going to die? No, the officer says, stepping forward and cutting the noose. You're going back to sea. You collapse to your knees, the rope falling around your neck like a defeated scarf. Back to sea, you whisper, but I just got done dying. The judge waves dismissively. Clear the gallows. Next. You're yanked to your feet and handed a navy jacket that smells like resignation and damp wool. Jenkins sprints up, grinning ear to ear. They're letting you live? He says. I guess. He pats your back. Told you you'd mess this up. You're marched away past the gallows, past the hangman now muttering about wasted knots. As you pass the crowd, a child throws a piece of bread at you. You catch it, you eat it. It's better than anything the pirate cook ever made. By sundown, you're on a different ship, a naval one. The beds are slightly less terrible, the captain is slightly more sober, and the rules are even worse than before. You stare out at the horizon. You're alive, which is something. And now you serve the Crown. The same one you robbed. Piracy, it turns out, is a temporary career. But being stuck at sea forever, that's a life sentence. Not well, mind you. The melody is borrowed from a drunken sea shanty, and the lyrics rhyme sea with me 17 times. But still, they sing. In taverns from Port Royal to Portsmouth, your name tumbles off slurred lips like treasure from a broken chest. You're not sure how it started. Maybe it was Jenkins. He's always been a bit too enthusiastic with a tankard in hand and a captive audience. Or maybe it was that travelling bard who saw you vomit on a navy officer's boots and somehow mistook it for an act of defiance. Either way, the truth is long gone. Now you are Captain Bloody Reckless, scourge of the Caribbean, defeater of 100 men, lover of queens, and, according to one song, the inventor of the anchor. You are definitely not the inventor of the anchor. The real story, the lice, the dysentery, the time you accidentally set your own pants on fire while trying to light a pipe, that doesn't get mentioned. No one sings about the 3 weeks you spent stranded on an island where the only food source was a species of bird that screamed like it was personally offended every time you got near it. No one remembers the rash. You remember the rash. But legends, it seems, are forged in forgetfulness. A tavern in Tortuga has a painting of you now. It's terrible. You look heroic, broad-chested, eyes fierce, holding a pistol aloft as waves crash dramatically behind you. The painter clearly never saw your real chest, which is concave and covered in questionable freckles, or your eyes, which squint whenever you try to read things more than 10 feet away. But no one cares about accuracy when they're 5 drinks deep. You've walked into that tavern before, incognito, just to see if the story changes. It always does. Sometimes you sank 5 ships in a day. Sometimes you tamed a kraken with nothing but a whistle and a stern look. Once, someone claimed you bit off a man's ear during a duel and used it as a compass. You didn't, probably. It's all nonsense. But you never correct them, because here's the secret they never tell you. It's easier to be a legend than a man. Men limp. Men cry in their hammocks when no one's looking. Legends don't get diarrhea from undercooked eel. You sit in the corner of yet another tavern now, cloak pulled low, sipping watered-down rum through cracked lips. No one notices you. The bard strums his lute. voice warbling through a sea ballad with verses that get bolder each time. A child listens wide-eyed as the tale grows grander. Now you fought a sea serpent using only your boot and sarcasm. You nearly choke on your drink. An old sailor leans across the table, nudging your arm. You ever meet the real Captain Bloody Reckless? He asks, grinning toothless. You blink, then nod slowly. Aye, once. What was he like? You pause, swallow, look him in the eye. Shorter than you'd think. Smelled like disappointment and wet rope. Terrible at cards. The sailor laughs. That's what they say about all the greats. Later, outside, you piss against a wall while seagulls heckle you from a rooftop. Your knees crack, your boots are starting to rot from the inside, and you're down to your last 2 coins. Fame doesn't pay well unless you're dead. You consider correcting the bard next time, telling him that your name isn't Bloody Reckless, it's Edward. You hate boats. You joined the crew because someone stole your rent money, and the recruiter had a charming beard. You stayed because there was nowhere else to go. But you know how that'll end. The truth gets you silence, the lie gets you drinks. You shuffle back inside, sit in the dark, and let the music play. A younger sailor buys a round for the table in your honour. You lift your mug and nod. You smile. You let the song carry your name across the room, smooth and heroic and completely untrue. Because the truth is, you regret almost everything. The smell, the cold, the betrayals, the rations, the fact that you haven't had a proper night's sleep in a real bed in over 6 years, the hallucinations that came with your second bout of scurvy, the time Jenkins accidentally mistook a lantern for a coconut and set the galley on fire. Again. You regret all of it, but not this moment. Not the part where you get to sit, drink, and hear 100 strangers raise your name like a flag, even if they don't know who you are, even if you barely remember who you were. Maybe that's the most pirate thing of all. Letting the world think you were more dangerous, more dashing, more dead than you ever were. And maybe in the end, that's enough. You live in whispers now, not literally. You do still breathe, eat, and occasionally stub your toe on inconveniently placed barrels. But in the eyes of the world, you no longer exist. Somewhere along the coast, a Royal Navy registry lists you as presumed deceased, and the sea has kindly chosen not to correct the error. There's freedom in being dead. Real freedom. Not the pirate brochure kind where you're promised gold and wenches, but the quieter kind. Freedom from expectation, from reputation, from the responsibility of pretending you still care about adventure. No one asks dead men to lead mutinies. You spend most of your days in a little fishing village where no one knows your name. You mend nets. You lie about your limp. You spend a lot of time staring at the horizon and wondering whether you'd actually recognize your old ship if it sailed by. You probably wouldn't. Half of your memory is smoke and concussion, and the other half is, well, not much better. Some nights, the children of the village beg you for pirate stories. You try to tell them the truth about the hunger, the rats, the cold sweat that comes when a cannonball whistles past your ear. But they want treasure, ghost ships, skeleton crews, buried chests with beating hearts inside. So you lie, again. Because here's the thing you've learned. When people ask for a legend, they don't want a confession. They want theatre. They want sharp cutlasses, thunderous laughter, clever escapes. And fine, maybe you do too. So you give them what they want. You tell them how you escaped a naval blockade by hiding in a barrel of salt pork, how you wrestled a Spanish officer with a silver fork and a well-timed insult, how your parrot once bit off a governor's ear. You never owned a parrot, but they love that part. Their eyes go wide. Their jaws drop. And for a few minutes you feel something close to real again. Not the man you are, but the ghost they believe you to be. It's oddly comforting. The village priest doesn't like you much. You don't blame him. You smell like fish guts and poor decisions, and he caught you one morning mumbling half-remembered sailors' curses at the tide. He thinks you're a drunk. He's not wrong. One morning, you find a newspaper, damp and torn, floating ashore. The date's wrong by several months, but the headline stops you cold. Infamous pirate Bloody Reckless sighted in Havana. You read it twice, 3 times. You laugh until your ribs hurt. You're not in Havana. You're not even infamous anymore. You're a ghost in a village that doesn't care. Someone's taken your name, or maybe invented a new version of it. It's hard to tell. Maybe you've become a symbol now, a brand, a convenient placeholder for every barroom tale that needs a bit more swagger. And you know what? Let them have it. Let them tell stories. Let them paint you on flags, scribble you into journals, tattoo your name on their thighs after 5 shots of rum. You don't need to correct them. The truth wouldn't survive a second voyage anyway. But one night, just one, you decide to make peace with it. You walk out to the beach, where the tide hisses against the sand like an old friend mumbling insults. You carry the last thing you've kept, a compass. It's busted. It points west no matter which way you turn. But it's yours. It came from a ship that no longer floats, given by a quartermaster who no longer breathes. And it reminds you of the days when you believed you'd find something out there. You bury it, deep. No chest, no map, just a busted compass beneath a pile of stones, a secret without glory, a grave for a name that never fit you right anyway. You sit there for a while, listening. The waves tell no tales. They don't care about your regrets. They don't care about your fake name, your missing teeth, or your drunken eulogies. They just keep coming, same as they always have. Eventually, you stand, stretch. Your back cracks like a mast in a storm. A kid from the village runs up behind you, eyes wide. "Is it true," he pants, "that you once kissed the sea witch and lived?" You blink. What? He nods. That's what they're saying now, that she gave you gills. That's why you're still alive. You stare at him, then you grin. Of course it's true. How else do you think I smell like fish all the time? He gasps, runs off, already telling the others. You shake your head, laugh softly, then turn inland, away from the tide. You're a legend now, not because you earned it, not because you wanted it, but because no one bothered to remember the real you. And maybe that's for the best.